What is going on, everybody? Today I am bringing you yet another money making video, and this one is going to pertain to the Chambers of Xeric, how much you can make per raid and how much that I made per raid. Now I went through and did 100 raids. I tracked all the times, how long the raid took, how long it took me to scout the raid, and all of the loot that came along with it, and I will be averaging all this out so you can find out exactly how much you can expect to make from raids on a normal basis. Now, every raid is different depending on what you scout, what kind of shortcuts are in there, and how many people you have in the raid is going to determine how many points you have at the end of the raid, and also how many times you die. Now, the amount of points that you get in a raid is going to determine what your drop is going to be. Personal points decide generally what kind of chest loot you get, and team points decide generally if there's going to be a unique drop or not. Now, for every 7,125 points, this will give you a 1% chance of receiving a drop from the unique loot table. If your team has 71,250 points at the end of the raid, you're going to have a 10% chance to roll a unique loot. Now this number is capped at 80%, so if you get enough points to get an 80% drop chance, your odds are still pretty good, but you'll never be able to actually hit that 100% drop rate. And even if you were, that would take a ton of people, a huge raid. But that is not possible. Once you get over that 80% cap, you do have the opportunity to roll 2 drops in one raid. Now there are quite a few different drops that you can receive from the Chambers of Xeric. There are 15 different unique drops. These are the Ancestral Hat, Ancestral Robe Bottoms, Ancestral Robe Tops, Arcane Prayer Scroll, Dexterous Prayer Scroll, Din's Bulwark, Dragon Claws, Dragon Harpoon, Dragon Hunter Crossbow, Dragon Sword, Dragon Throwing Axes, the Elder Maul, the Kodai Insignia, the Twisted Bow, and the Twisted Buckler. Now aside from getting one of these unique drops, each player in the raid also gets chest loot, and this chest loot is determined by your personal points. Obviously chest loot isn't as good as rolling a unique drop, but it still should not be taken lightly. If you do happen to not get a drop, then the chest loot will help you reclaim some of that money that you spent on supplies in the raid, plus a little bit more. There are some pretty decent stacks of things that you can get that will increase your chest loot. Dragon Arrows, Death Runes, Grimy Torstals, Grimy Renar Weeds, Grimy Snapdragons, Uncut Diamonds, and some other things here and there. All will add up over time, and if you do as many raids as I have, I generally save all of my chest loot for about 50 raids, and then I dump it just to have a little bit of stack and something to fall back on should I need the cash. Now chest loot is generally determined by dividing your total points number by a certain number for each of these items. Just for an example, the number of soul runes is generally determined by dividing your rounded point total by 20. The amount of coal is determined also by rounding your point total and dividing it by 20. And something like pure essence, because it is so cheap, is usually determined by dividing your point total by 2, which will give you a ton of pure essence if you have a decent amount of points in the raid. But something like that is something you generally don't want to see. Now you can get every type of grimy herbs from chest loot. You can get death, blood, and soul runes, rune and dragon arrows, a bunch of different types of ores and uncut gems. And what people usually don't want to see alongside the pure essence is lizardman fangs and saltpeter, because it is absolutely worthless. Now if you get a lizardman fangs and saltpeter chest at the end, you did not make any money in that raid, and believe me, I know it sucks. It has happened to me quite a few times. So let's go ahead now and get into all of the statistics about the raids that I did. So like I said earlier, I did do 100 raids. I kept track of all the time, all of the loot, what kind of unique drops, and how much they sold for, and what my splits were, to get all these statistics together to better paint the picture of how much the average person can make from raiding. Now my Chambers of Xeric kill count is very close to 400 at the time that this video is being released. So I do get through raids very efficiently, pretty quickly. Now these raids were generally 3 to 5 man raids, and at this time I would like to thank Blissville, Smart, and GhostingRS for helping me with all the raids to put this video together. They are also very efficient at raids. We've all done a ton of raids together, so we work very well together, so our times are going to be pretty decent. Now in a 3 to 5 man raid, we were not alting these. We did not have a +1 to increase the points for ourselves, but overall it took us almost 68 hours to do 100 raids. It was actually at 67.3 hours, and that's at an average of about 3 minutes to actually scout a raid as well. Now, it averages out to be about 41 minutes per raid, which is pretty good. The times that you want to shoot for in a 3 to 5 man raid are between probably 35 and 45 minutes on average. Now, you can speed run raids and do them in less than 30 minutes, but generally you won't get as many points when you're speed running. There are a few different mechanics that you have to do to get the raids to go quicker. So first we will go ahead and get my chest loot up on the screen. So from the total guide price down at the bottom, you can see 25,970,795 GP from my chest loot. Divided by 100 raids, my average chest loot was right around 260k, which isn't too bad. Definitely pays for supplies, definitely gives me a little profit if I didn't get any unique drops. As for the runes, 9,501 soul runes, 3,770 death runes, 4,080 blood runes. I only had 2 pure essence drops, which was very nice. As far as lizard man fangs and saltpeter, 10,780 saltpeter and 5,161 lizard man fangs. Really hurt the chest loot there because I did get quite a few drops of those. The rest of the stuff you can see does add up. Had a bunch of rune ore, 107. Torstals, 195 torstals, ended up being 2.2 mil, just about. Renar weeds were up there as well, and some snapdragons. But yeah, this is chest loot, and in 100 raids, this is what you're going to be able to expect from chest loot. Just about 260k per chest. Now, I will say that in my average raid, I generally average somewhere between 25,000 and 30,000 points. So that does have an effect on chest loot as well. If you average lower, say 20,000, you will get a little less chest loot, and you'll probably be sitting around somewhere about 230,000 GP per raid. Moving on to the rest of the loot, we will now get into what kind of unique drops that I was a part of throughout these 100 raids. And coming up on the screen now, you can see some of the screenshots from the unique drops that I was a part of. Now, throughout these raids, I probably averaged somewhere between 71 and 75,000 points. So our drop rate was generally between 10 and 13%, which isn't bad. I did end up only getting 8 unique drops throughout the 100 raids, which averaged me a drop about 1 in every 12.5 raids for this particular 100 raids. Now, these are only 4 of my drops, but I was a part of 8 drops throughout this 100 raids. I ended up being a part of 2 dragon harpoons, 1 arcane prayer scroll, 2 elder mauls, 2 dexterous prayer scrolls, and 1 twisted buckler. Now, all of these drops and their splits, depending on the team size, ended up getting me an additional 58,220,000 GP on top of my chest loot. And adding both my chest loot and my split amounts together brought me to a total of 84,190,795 total GP. Dividing these by both the 100 raids that I did and the 67 or so hours that it took me, I ended up making about 842,000 GP per raid, which averaged out to be 1,250,977 GP per hour. Now, if you know anything about the raids drop tables, you will know that some items share drop tables with other items, and unfortunately for me and my team, we did end up pulling 2 elder mauls, which is on the exact same drop table as the twisted bow. Had we have pulled 2 twisted bows instead of 2 elder mauls, the GP per hour and GP per raid would have absolutely skyrocketed because they are currently right around 1.25 billion GP, so that would have been a very nice RuneScape paycheck had we pulled 2 twisted bows instead of the elder mauls. Now, we also did end up pulling an arcane prayer scroll, which shares the same drop table with the dexterous prayer scrolls, so I could have had 3 of those instead of 2. And we also had a twisted buckler, which shares the drop table with the dragon hunter crossbow, and those are about 100 mil or so, which also would have increased my split amounts very nicely. But that is going to do it, guys. I think this video will give you a nice basis to what you can expect from raiding and how much you can expect to make per raid on average on the lower end. Obviously, our drops were somewhat subpar with the Harpoons, the Arcane Prayer Scroll, a couple of Elder Mauls. There definitely is a lot of room to make a lot more money than I actually did during these raids. Now, if you do happen to get lucky and pull 2 Twisted Bows instead of 2 Elder Mauls, on a 3-man split, that's over 400 million GP for each person. But after you have finished watching this video, if you have never raided before and are looking to learn to raid, I do have a very long guide that encompasses just about every single thing within the Chambers of Xeric. So if you stick around to the very end of the video, you will find a thumbnail link that you can click on to take yourself to that video and get yourself learning to do some raids. If you like this video, please leave a thumbs up down below. They really help videos spread around. And if you have any questions or comments, you can also leave those down below and I will try to respond to every single one that I possibly can. If you have not done so yet, please tap that subscribe button on your way out. Your subscribes mean a ton to me. But as for this video, I am done and I will see you guys on the next one. Take it easy, everybody.